Now, an attributes of a bottom-up organization. Any organization, I want to make a couple points here. I'm going to talk actually about a couple of companies. Any organization that uses these principles will be successful beyond belief, because it's human nature is whatever organizational structure they're in, whether it's a government or a company or a nonprofit organization or a club, it doesn't matter. If human beings are allowed to use their free will, it's like a muscle. If they're allowed to exercise their free will, they'll be stronger. It's like all their creativity and their intelligence and their power is able to be used in such an organization. And there are examples of companies that have done this. Gore and Associates is one. Amazing company where they just allow people to come in. They're all associates. There's no employers, employees. Management level doesn't really exist. A brand new person coming in can negotiate his way into any part of the company. It's really a series of hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurial companies within the overall company. One of the largest privately held companies on the planet. Never borrowed money, never raised money. It's a privately held company where everyone is engaged in part of the profit structure. And multi-billion-dollar company. They make Gore-Tex boots and all those things. You've heard of them, right? Gore and Associate, Gore-Tex boots and jackets and all that.
How do you spell that?
G-O-R-E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Another company recently that has done the same thing is this Semco that Tom Peters just wrote a book about called Maverick down in Brazil. They allowed the employees to have say in everything that is done with the company. The employees asked for 23.5% of the profits. That's what they came up with. They felt that would be fair. The company gave that to them. Everybody's an owner now. Everybody's an associate. There are no employees and managers, and that company has taken off. People are coming from all over the world to see how they've done it. Now, the company I want to talk about, sort of the leader in this whole area, is Visa. You've all heard of Visa, Visa card. Visa card started out as Bank of America card. And Bank of America in the late 60s had no idea what to do with their credit card company because credit cards were a fledgling industry there. Nobody had any idea that it would even take off. And they were looking for somebody to take over that division. A fellow by the name of D. Hock took it over. D wrote a book called Birth of the Chaotic Age about what he did at Visa. But basically, he implemented a bottom-up organizational structure in Visa that resulted within 12 years of Bank of America card becoming Visa. They changed the name to Visa, and it became the largest commercial enterprise on planet Earth with $1.5 trillion in revenue in just a few years. It was an amazing story. And what he does in this book is he talks about these fundamental principles. And I'm going to compare these to certain government principles in just a minute. So pay attention to the list and we'll compare them, see how similar they are. It must not attempt to impose uniformity. It should be open to all qualified participants. Power, function, and resources should be distributed to the maximum degree. In other words, pushing power and authority to the furthest limits of the organization possible. No interest should be able to dominate deliberations or control decisions, particularly management. To the maximum degree possible, everything should be voluntary, non-coercion. It should introduce, not compel, change. And it should be infinitely malleable, yet extremely durable. So those were the fundamental principles that D. Hock, he actually talks about how he observed nature, and that's how he came up with these principles, principles of natural law. Now, when the founders were talking about how to structure their government, they looked at examples from Greece and Rome and all the different civilizations, and the two that they liked best were the Anglo-Saxons and early Israel under Moses. They really liked that structure. And in 5,000 Year Leap, Cleon Skousen talks about those two civilizations, and he lists the attributes of both of them. Look at this list and how similar it is to what you just saw. Equal representation, unalienable rights of the individual, local resolution of problems to the maximum extent possible. Few laws, those that did exist, were well known by the people. A justice system based on complete reparation to the person who had been wronged. Organized into small groups in which every adult had a voice and a vote. And family units of 10, with each of those units of 10 with an elected leader, and then 5 units of those 10 groups in a group of 50 families with an elected leader, and so on. That's how they did it. So it created a bottom-up organization where the power was coming at the base of this pyramid here you're seeing, starting there with the individual, with the family, with the local group of 10 and 50 and so on, and working its way up to where Moses really had very little to do once he set this structure up. So that was the bottom-up structure. Both the Anglo-Saxons and the early Israelites had that, and it worked very, very, very well. So what our forefathers ended up with is a structure that was based on this, where individuals and families were at the base. That's where the power was. Townships and civic organizations is where virtually all problems were solved. The state government had very little to do and was restricted by its constitution, its state constitution, and the federal government was even more restricted by certain enumerated powers that it was supposed to stay within. So that's how it worked. And it worked so well that by 1905, the United States, with 6% of the landmass of the world and 5% of the population of the world, ended up producing, producing almost over 50% of almost everything. Luxuries, clothing, food, everything. And more people came here from other countries than any other planet in the history of the planet, or any other country in the history of the planet, yeah. So, and that figure is from Cleon Skousen and 5,000 Year Leap. In other words, it created incredible prosperity, incredible freedom. Again, it's just simple, basic, fundamental principles of human nature and what happens when people are free and allowed to develop their full potential. So what happened? In the last 100 years, this thing has been completely flipped upside down, where we now have the federal government telling us what kind of toilets we can put in our house, what kind of light bulbs we can have to put in our house. Now with the new Food Safety Act, whether or not we can grow a greenhouse and who we can sell our greenhouse products to. It's all under the control of the federal government now, that we can't have bake sales in our public schools, and on and on and on. And there's many, many examples, but it's just over the top, and it's complete upside down of what was originally the plan in this country. When Tocqueville came here in 1820s and he wrote Democracy in America, he spent 9 years studying America, going to communities. And what struck him was that he said government was invisible. Government had nothing to do with people's lives. But every single person he met belonged to at least 6 to 7 different groups. Service organizations, nonprofit organizations, all these groups that would improve life within the community. And that's where problems were handled. Substance abuse and welfare and just about everything else you can think of was handled with non-coercive, non-force-based, voluntary organizations. And that's what impressed him about America. Bottom up. So, obviously, we need to get back to that. And, by the way, this shift has occurred for several reasons, but one is just the natural tendency of power to coalesce and concentrate over time, and especially if the individuals who create these surrogates aren't vigilant, aren't watching all the time, this is what happens. The surrogate will use its power to grow its own power more and more and more and become out of control. So what we need to do, and also top-down management is always based, and behind that is always brute force. So it's time to flip that power paradigm, power pyramid back. And what I'm excited about, because I've been involved in this movement for 25 years, is that finally somebody's solved the problem of how we do this in a way that really, I think, can work and really has momentum behind it. Because what the Republic of the United States is all about is re-inhabiting the original republic. Since the original republic was formed, 40 million laws, approximately, have been created at the state and federal level. 40 million laws. How do you deal with that? How do you undo all that? Well, the beauty about the republic is that we're going back to the Constitution as it was created. So everything that's happened since then is wiped out. All the damage that's been done to our bottom-up structure that was created in 1787 is wiped off the chart, which is very powerful. Federal Reserve doesn't exist in the Republic. Income tax doesn't exist in the Republic. So instead of trying to undo all this damage that's been done bit by bit, we just start over again in essence. So I just want to review one more time a little bit about the nature of bottom-up versus top-down, because it's really important to understand this. Because once you understand this, you understand how every single problem that we have can be better solved in this manner. So top-down versus bottom-up. Whenever force has to be used, whenever you have a top-down structure and you have, and it's like this, and they're trying to control everything that's happening down here, even to the local level, like forcing us to use a certain light bulb or a toilet or whatever. How does that force, what kind of emotion does it create in the society? Fear, right? It's fear-based. And so fear is a predominant emotion in society. In a bottom-up society, it's all about the individual and the family. The family unit is a basic structure, which is what holds that family together is love. So it's love versus fear. It's freedom versus control. It's non-coercion versus force. It's local control versus centralized planning. It's abundant creativity versus stifled creativity. It's optimism versus despair. It's strong families versus breakdown of families. And it's personal responsibility versus dependence. Universal opportunity versus concentrated power. And ultimately, prosperity versus poverty. So what we do, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's pretty obvious from what I'm saying here that we can solve problems better if the people within a group are using more of their potential, more creativity, more of their potential. And the top-down model restricts that. And all problems in society can be better solved with more of their inner power and intelligence within that environment of harmony and cooperation. So what we do in the rest of Common Sense Revisited, which I'm not going to spend much time on right now, is we go through several different areas of society. We go through economics and the monetary system, welfare, education, healthcare, environment, drugs, defense and foreign relations. We go through all those different things and explain how bottom-up solutions are working better where they're being implemented than top-down solutions. So I invite you to read that. Not going to spend a whole lot more time on that. I do want to mention just a couple things about monetary policy, a couple things on welfare and environment, just to give you kind of an example. First of all, this is one of the, I think, most important quotes, and it's most, and very important to, and pertinent to what's going on in our country today. This is from John Adams to Thomas Jefferson. All the perplexities, confusion, and distress in America arise not from defects in the Constitution or Confederation, not from want of honor or virtue, so much as from downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation. It's a key fundamental area that we are ignorant of in this country. We don't understand money. We don't understand how it works. We don't understand what the government and Federal Reserve have done to us and to our money. Very few people understand this. It's absolutely essential that we do. One of the few people in government, maybe the only person in government, that really understands it is Ron Paul.